Welcome in this last day of the Business Forum to the seminar on how intellectual property can help increase SMEs competitiveness in a continental market. Esther Huerta speaking from the AfrIPI project. I will be your moderator during this session. And today we have the privilege to come today with a diversified number of very good speakers coming from the AfrIPI, from the World Intellectual Property Office, and from an African SME that will come with a very, very interesting case study. Your feedback is extremely welcome because we want this session to be very interactive. So you're very welcome to start as of now to ask any question you want. You can post it in the Business Forum chat. And at the end, we will have a session that is really to answer to all the questions that you may have. But before starting the webinar, I would like to introduce you to Gaëlle Doléan for some introductory words. Gaëlle is a project manager on economic integration and statistics in DG INPA. She is in charge of the AfrIPI project that is co-funded by the European Commission and by the European Union Intellectual Property Office. It's a project where we work with our African partners, AfrIPI, OAPI, and the African Union. Gaëlle, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Esther. Welcome to everyone. It's my pleasure to open this session today on the last day of the Business Forum. Very busy, last but very busy day. So it is a pleasure indeed to be with you. Just to say a few opening words. As we know, I mean, the African Continental Free Trade Area is coming more and more to be a reality, and there are plenty of opportunities to work to enter the African continental market. But still, there are some obstacles. SMEs, being European and African SMEs, have the potential to seize these opportunities on the African market. But still, it is not easy. There are some obstacles, but there are also tools and opportunities to increase their competitiveness on the African market. And this is why we're here today because intellectual property can be a really concrete tool for increasing their competitiveness. Because actually SMEs do not always know how to generate value from their ideas. And this is, I think, what the session today is about, is to show really how IP can be a concrete tool for this. This is also why the AfrIPI program was set up. It is part of the programs supported by the EU, by the European Commission to support the African Continental Free Trade area. And it is implemented by our partner, the European Intellectual Property Agency, EUIPO, who has been fully organizing this workshop today. So a big thank you for them. And they are implementing, so with our African partners, the program on the ground and it is the first, I would like to underline, it is the first EU program on IP which is active on the entire African continent. Lastly, I would like to thank our partners, and today we have with us a representative of the World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, with whom we are working closely. And that's it. I think the idea is to have a very practical session, as Esther mentioned. So I wish you a very fruitful, practical, and enjoy the session. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Gaëlle. So I will introduce you to our first speaker, who is Nancy Samuriwo. Nancy is currently serving as an IP consultant for the AfrIPI project. She is also the founder of Samuriwo Attorneys, an IP law firm that is based in Harare, Zimbabwe, where the African Intellectual Property Organization, ARIPO, is based. She served as the chairperson of the ARIPO working group. She sits on several corporate boards advising on intellectual property rights and is a member of INTA's African Global Advisory Council. Nancy is here today to talk to us about the challenges of intellectual property protection in Africa. So looking forward to hearing you, Nancy.
Thank you very much for that introduction. And Gaëlle, thank you very, very much for also those important remarks. I think whilst we are just warming up for my presentation and settling down, I just thought I could just share a few things about my presentation. My name is Nancy, as you've heard, and my take on Africa is that you can't actually talk about Africa as a woman unless you're as colorful as I look today. That is purely just African. You will have my slides, so I will try not to really just bother you with the content. The whole idea, enjoy this session. My topic is, my topic today is going to be on challenges on African challenges on IP protection in Africa. And I hope you can all see my screen. Please just say yes, so that I also know that Okay, so thank you. That's technology for you, especially if you're African. So I'm going to be speaking about Africa-specific challenges of IP protection. When I was working on this as a mother, my daughter asked me, why do they have to be Africa-specific? And that got me thinking, yes, what is Africa specificity? And I thought I could just mention this as we look into it. Africa is diverse, as you know. Africa, some say we're complex, but we are simple in our complexity. And here is how. Firstly, did you know that of the 4 Guineas of the world, 3 are in Africa? We have Guinea, we have Guinea-Bissau, we've got Guinea Equatorial. Which other continent has got 3 names for the same countries? I cannot think of any. Can you imagine if we had Spain, and then Spain Equatorial, and then Spain Bissau? How would that work? But if you move away from West Africa, where we've got the 3 Guineas, in the Central Africa, we've got 2 Congos, the DRC Congo, which is also called Congo Kinshasa, and we've got also the other Congo, which we call Congo Brazzaville. And these are 2 different countries, and this just adds to our complexity and to our beauty. In Southern Africa, years back when I was young, we used to have 2 Rhodesias. There was Southern Rhodesia, which is now Southern Rhodesia and Northern Rhodesia. And these countries are now Zimbabwe and Zambia. But they were both called Rhodesia and then denoted by North and South. That's different. And nowadays in Africa, still staying in Southern Africa, the way we name our children, we don't call them Peter, Mary, John. Yes, this can be second names, but we name our children according to events. If you trust, the child is called trust more, give more, love more, or other incidents. If you were left by the husband, it's like Garandi Chawia. It means stay and I wait for you. I can't think of any other continent really immediately where all these nuances and these idiosyncrasies all come eclectically together as one. But having spoken about West Africa, Central Africa, and Southern Africa, these might appear like differences. But wait, there's one thing that binds us together. You might remember this. You wanna bamba? Wanna chill with the big boys? That was an anthem in December in Africa. You wanna bamba? You want to chill with the big guys? You want to run kitty kitty, don't kitty kitty, ha? Who? What does that actually mean? Nothing. But it brought the whole continent dancing. It even went further from Africa, and it brought all of us together. So when I talk about challenges, and going back to my slide now, there is more about Africa that really keeps us together than what separates us. So when we talk about the general expectations, I'll measure these against challenges, and you're now sharing my screen. What are the expectations of IP proprietors when they come into Africa? With respect, because I'm a lawyer, we normally start by saying respectfully. I think these are the effective protection, broad territorial coverage, if cost effectiveness, and quick registrations. And all these expectations are bound in simplicity, because that is what people want, something that they can understand and that they can work together with. Why is there an emphasis on simplicity? Because it is powerful. It's not me saying it. That's Robin Sharma there. Never overlook the power of simplicity. It is important, even as we formulate our IP structures. And now looking at the simplicity versus the reality. What do we have in Africa? So in Africa, you find that we do not have a single IP protocol. We don't. In Africa, we have got 55 countries. There are more that are about to secede. Some people say 54, some say 55. It's because some are not recognized and some are not. But the basic thing is we've got 55 countries. And out of those 55, mathematically, 22 are members of the AfrIPI organization, where I'm based, and this is the African Regional Intellectual Property Organization. For some to easily remember it, this is the Anglo-speaking of the two African IP regional formations that are there. We have 21 member states currently, but happily we've got the 22nd, which is in the ban right now, and OAPI has 17 states. So if we look mathematically at how we cover Africa in terms of IP, we've got 39 out of 55 states. And then the rest of the other countries fall into national formations. And either fortunately or unfortunately, this is where sometimes you find the big guys of Africa or the big girls of Africa. Nigeria, Egypt, the DRC, Congo, Angola, they're there, but they've got their own systems. So if you're looking for simplicity and you want to go into Africa, the question is, how do you actually know whether to be in a RIPO or WAPI or national system? So this is one of the challenges that IP proprietors often contend with, this lack of having just a uniform, IP protocol that covers Africa. But I think, as Gael mentioned, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement is all about breaking borders and making us one global trade economic barrier. And this is one of the things that the AfrIPI project is working towards. So in terms of what we're looking for, regional systems have got their own challenges. Harmonization, if you look at AfrIPI and OAPI, the extent to which national laws are harmonized. Briefly, I think most people do know the distinction between AfrIPI and OAPI is that OAPI offers a unitary system, where there's just, the Bangui Agreement, which speaks into the national laws of the other countries. And distinctively, AfrIPI is a designation system, more like your a la carte. You pick and choose the states that you want. States retain sovereignty over their national laws. So this can be a complication to some IP proprietors, and it can be something that some people do want. So to aid simplicity, one of the objectives of AfrIPI is to aid inter-African trade. And this is done by secondment in practice, secondment of an expert, to lend to the effect-based crafting of an IP protocol. And this is taking place in Ghana under the auspices of the African Union's African Continental Free Trade Agreement. And then AfrIPI also supports IP policy IP activities, IP awareness through the various activities that AfrIPI does. And you can see this from our website. So another challenge that we do face when we're going into Africa is, I think, a mismatch of expectations. Businesses venturing into Africa want effective protection, whatever effective protection means. But, they want brands to be protected in as many countries as they want. But we will see how this works. But the message that we say to this challenge of securing effective protection is that no man is an island. So if you want effective protection in Africa, you have to be prepared to be part of the value chain. You have to build, create, and maintain relationships with your service providers, stakeholders, IP registries, the police that enforces border controls, your legal practitioners or your IP agents. You need that to bolster effective protection. Another challenge is that proprietors want broad territorial coverage of protection. I've already mentioned that the complexity of Africa is that you've got many countries, and the issue is that as businesses progress, they want territorial protection in each country, but the nature of the businesses is transnational, and the nature of the legal protection is territorial. That is the fact. The expectation is transnational protection. So these two sometimes really impact and challenge the extent to which proprietors can secure broad protection in Africa. So how this is done is really, I think, by having to leverage on your regional IP protection systems, leverage on your relationships to try to figure out how much of Africa you can actually cover. So you find that you might actually have a strategy that incorporates the two regional formations. You've got registrations that you put in ORP, registrations that you put in AfrIPI, and then you go national in selected countries depending on your strategy. So the main thing that I can say about the challenges to broad territorial coverage, the answer, I think, as my colleague Beata will say when she speaks about the help desk, is that you really have to know how to navigate Africa, really, from the top to the bottom. And the key word here, I think if I was an R&B star, they all have these names, would be KYBG, and know your countries before you go. So you really have to know. Another challenge to the broad coverage of IP is one of costs. These regional formations and making use of the leveraging that I was talking about can also inform your costs and make you cost sensitive and cost competitive. So you really have to know how to use the systems to the best ability, and make sure that you use a strategy that really speaks to cost containment or cost reduction. So that comes from the relationships as well. So in summary, for the cost challenge, one really wants to have a strategy where you minimize your costs, but at the same time, you maximize your protection. So you have to learn and you have to know how to make effective use of regional and national and also international IP systems. Say, for instance, trademarks. You have to think why you have to use the Madrid system for Africa and how and why you would use, for example, in AfrIPI, the Banjul Protocol on trademarks. So your relationships with your IP advisors in Africa will often help you to make this informed decision. Another challenge is about quick protection. I think you've heard it. In Africa, sometimes things move according to our own pace. We have our own respect for time. And it might not necessarily be in accordance with your expectations as to the registration timelines. But bottom line, in business, we all appreciate that a space is an anathema to business. Get over the issue of slow pace registration. Again, it's a strategy of leveraging. Know when to leverage your international systems and when to leverage your regional systems. So, for example, if you want to protect patents, then leverage on the PCT. You get the same priority date in AfrIPI, for instance, which is based on the PCT filing date. And you have a delayed period of between 31 and 30 months in which to regionalize or to nationalize your patent protection. So these are ways in which you can actually overcome the challenge of slow protection, because otherwise trademark registrations in some countries can take up to 3 years. And if you're dealing, for example, with a green tech trademark, 3 years is too long. By the time you get that registration, technology is far outpaced your objective for protection. So leveraging is like a Game of Thrones. Eventually, you know how to get there. So in order not to overstep my slot, I would say if you really want to be in Africa to overcome the challenges, IP Nostrum is one of the things that I formulated within my own firm. And it really says, for your IP, you have to know that is where the KNO starts from. You have to strategize. You have to build relationships. You have to really know before you go, and then you move. That is where that comes from. So strategize, build relationships in Africa that can enhance your protection for your IP, move to protect your IP effectively. Last words. I think my personal mantra in my firm is imagine, inspire, grow. And these are the three words that I think summarize what Africa is all about when you're thinking about IP. Imagine. Think of the transformative power of imagination. Before you have it, you have to imagine it for you to think it and for you to strategize it. Inspire. Come into Africa with a view to inspiring change and with a view to being inspired by what we Africans offer, even in our national systems. Please take time to understand this. That is the basis of relationships. Grow. You need to grow your business in Africa. We also need to grow in our IP systems. So together, as one, we can work and grow IP and overcome the challenges. So finally, imagine, inspire, grow. If you want to bamba and chill with the big guys. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Nancy, for these very inspiring words that you shared with us. Now that we heard about the challenges of intellectual property, let's see how this applies to companies, actually. And for this, we have Guy Pessach with us. Guy Pessach is the Director of IP for Business Division and of IP and Innovation Ecosystem Sector in the World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, that is based in Geneva. Prior to joining WIPO, Guy was a law professor at the Faculty of Law, Hebrew University of Jerusalem, specializing in intellectual property, law and technology, and the creative industries. So, Guy, the floor is yours to speak about intellectual property for business.
Thank you, Gael, Esther, and also Nancy for this extremely inspiring presentation. Just before I begin, can you see my slides in full screen, or do I need to do anything? Okay, so it will take me 1 minute. Yeah. Okay, is it okay now? Okay. Okay, so hello everyone. And I just want to begin by saying that it's really a great honor and pleasure for the IP for Business Division at WIPO to participate in this important event, share our experiences, programs, and aspirations in general in the context of making IP work for SMEs, but overall and particularly in the African region. And very soon I will share with you some of our tools, materials, programs, and projects. And I just want to begin by emphasizing that for me, this presentation is a promotion and marketing exercise with anticipation and hope that it will be followed by giving us the opportunity and the ability to further work within the African region and main stakeholders such as AfrIPI and API in providing our services, tools, and materials to the benefit of the region. Now, this event is organized as part of AfrIPI International Cooperation Project, which I think rests on certain premises, one may even say axioms, that we all share. To begin with, the crucial and predominant economic growth and competitiveness ramifications derived by the effective integration of the IP system into national and regional ecosystems, and more specifically in the context of SMEs and the private sector. And these premises gain even more force with the establishment of the African Continental Free Trade Area, because regional integration within the African continent is aimed, among others, to create free zone market for goods and services, and with it also the prosperity of trade and investment. Now, IP has a crucial role in this regard. I think as demonstrated in the protocol on IP, still a draft yet to be part of the AFC FTA agreement. And in a nutshell, the IP protocol is aimed to support one single coherent African-centered IP regime, which is adjusted to the needs and the attributes of the region. But once establishing this framework, once it is accomplished, the next objective would be implementation, moving from setting the legal framework to ensuring robust utilization of this integrated IP system by its beneficiaries, from policy to practice, from setting the system to proactively ensuring that its various facilitators and beneficiaries can effectively utilize it in order to build their competitiveness, economic growth, and to benefit, to the benefit of the region and its member states. And I would say that this is our joint goal. This is also our joint commitment. This is WIPO's commitment to the African region. And this is also one of the overall objectives of the IP and innovation sector at WIPO, headed by Assistant Director General Marco Aleman, and in the context of SMEs, the IP for Business division. Therefore, with your permission, what I would like to do in the next 15 minutes is to walk you very briefly over our objectives, key strategies, and programs, and then also share with you some practical options for WIPO's potential contribution to this very worthy pursuit of making IP work for SMEs in the African region. A few words about the IP and innovation ecosystem sector, and then we will zoom into the IP for Business division. The IP and innovation ecosystem sector is practically WIPO's arm to provide a one-stop shop, a 360 degrees coverage that support member states in developing sustainable ecosystems that build upon intangibles and the IP system. Now, as such, it covers all the main sectors within a nation arena: the private sector, the academia, universities, the governmental sector, and more importantly, the interactions between them. Additionally, it also covers institutional pillars such as the judiciary via the Judicial Institute, and institutions dealing with arbitration and mediation via the ADR Center. Last but not least, it also covers the economic dimension via the Chief Economist Department, which deals with all aspects related to economic research, building upon the premise that at the end of the day, IP is not just a legal right, but practically, one may say first and foremost, also an economic tool. What are IES support schemes from a bird's eye view? Now, I would say that the main thing to emphasize is that our approach is an holistic approach, under which each of the various sectors, the private sector, the academia, and the governmental sector, does not operate and should not operate in silos, but rather via reciprocal flow of innovation, knowledge, and funding between the different sectors. Think about technology transfer. At the end of the day, programs and projects are based on this premise and are aimed to improve the synergies between the various sectors. This is also reflected in the work that the sector is doing in the context of national IP strategies. Zooming into the IP for Business division, making IP work for SMEs. The IP for Business division is practically the hub which is responsible for SMEs related IP issues. It rests on the shared evidence-based premise about the linkage between reliance on the IP system and better economic performance, both at the firm's level and also at the national level, as demonstrated by a variety of studies, some of them by the EU IPO, some of them by WIPO, and by other institutions. It is also based on the understanding that the increasing share of intangible assets in our overall economies further enhances the centrality of IP rights, which are practically the infrastructure for value creation and value extraction in the context of intangibles. So the more the economy moves towards intangibles, the more predominant becomes the role of IP. On top of this, IP rights are also crucial for visibility in crowded markets, attracting investors and raising finance, and also establishing your competitive space. This is the vision. In reality, at the end of the day, many SMEs do not utilize and do not leverage what the IP system can provide them with. Data in most countries, including developed countries, indicates that overall, less than 10% of the businesses use the IP system, or at least the IP rights registries. Now, the reasons vary, and they include lack of awareness, lack of skills, lack of knowledge, perception of the IP system as costly and complicated. And additionally, on the grounds, different sectors and industries may trigger different IP rights and different IP strategies. You cannot compare a sector which focuses on agro-food, packaging, and the role of trademarks with an innovative sector which is more patent-oriented. This means that in order to make IP work for SMEs, we must come up with a user-friendly, business-oriented language that SMEs can understand, and that is also tailored specifically to their unique attributes and needs. It also means that when we work with member states, we need to assist them in developing efficient, cost-effective schemes through which they can reach a large number of SMEs, creating some sort of common shared practices of embedding IP into ongoing business contacts. Just like in the context of insurance, tax planning, developing a marketing plan, cybersecurity, IP strategy is no different. We need to find ways to reach SMEs. This is all in all our mission statement, but the challenge is how can we accomplish it? A few words about the IP for Business division key strategies, and then maybe moving towards a brief outline of our main programs and projects. So the key strategies that the division is focusing on is built upon three main components. The first component is to come up with products, tools, and services that are easy to comprehend, that resonate with a business audience, that have an high impact, and that can be embedded into an enterprise's DNA. I'll give you an example in a minute in the context of WIPO's IP diagnostic tool. But at the end of the day, in one sentence, we need to understand that SMEs have limited attention span. They have other things to focus on. So if we want to reach out with the IP component, we need to do it in their own language. The second key strategy, in one word, focuses on building and using effective networks. We need to identify those institutions, those intermediaries on the ground that SMEs have trust in and that SMEs communicate with on an ongoing basis. Because these institutions are practically the gateways that would enable SMEs to upskill their capacity to use the IP system. at least with regard to WIPO, we need to understand that we have limited capacity to work directly with SMEs. Everything that we will do at the end of the day will be a drop in the sea. So in any engagement with member states, the task goal is to identify partners, work via partnerships that enable us to work with local, domestic institutions through which we can deliver the message. And the third strategy focuses on what we call an evidence-based approach. It goes back to what I've just mentioned about the fact that different industries and different sectors trigger different IP rights. Different member states, different countries have different economic, technological, and social conditions. In order to build the IP skills of SMEs, we need to understand the specificities and particulars of a country. We need to understand what are the obstacles in using the IP system and how we can overcome them. So any engagement on a country-based level is always based on an assessment exercise which aims to better identify and correspond to the gaps and to the needs. These are the key strategies. The slide that you see in front of you practically outlines the various projects that the IP for Business division is engaged in. I won't have the time to go over each and every of these projects, but at the end of the PowerPoint, you have my email, and I would urge you to feel free to contact me in the specific projects that you do have an interest in, so I can further share with you some more details about these specific projects. And with this in mind, I'll just move on to a sample of the projects that we are engaged in, just to give you a taste how they correspond with the three key strategies that were just mentioned. So the first project that I want to focus on is the WIPO IP diagnostics. You have the link to the tool within this slide. This is an online tool currently available in all 6 UN languages and Japanese, and currently also being translated into a variety of additional languages, and also customized to the unique particular legal regimes of specific countries. The tool is practically an online questionnaire that businesses answer, and at the end of this questionnaire, they get a particular report which highlights the specific elements in which they need to take IP into account while developing their business strategy, and how IP can further build the economic competitiveness. It covers practically all IP-related aspects, meaning the various IP rights, such as patent, trademarks, design, copyright, and more. It also covers aspects related to employer-employee relationship, confidential information, IP aspects related to building your website, enforcement, going beyond domestic markets, and so on. The tool was launched in November 2021, and since then we see a growing demand for the tool across the various regions. This is a tool which is practically made available free of charge, and more than this, we are working together both with national IP offices and major intermediaries in a way that enables them to deploy the tool via their own platforms and via their own business support services for SMEs. In the context of the African region, we are now working together with Tanzania on deploying the tool, and we are very much hoping that we will be able to build a stronger working relationship both with OAPI and AfrIPI in a way that would practically customize the tool to the needs of the member countries. WIPO takes responsibility over financing and translation, and also over deploying the tool to the customized nature of each and every country. And I would be very happy to provide further details about the tool and the potential of deploying it on either on a country or on a regional level. In addition, we have a variety of guides which deal with IP for business, clustered around different IP dimensions. The most recent one is a guide for startups, but we also have specific guides that cover specific areas such as innovative industries, brand-related industries, and creative industries. And moving ahead, the main other project that I would like to mention are two projects that are worthy of mentioning. The one project is a project of working with national IP offices to develop their own business support units in national IP offices. This is a project in which we work together with national IP offices to build their capacities to support businesses and the private sector. It is a project which is conducted via a reciprocal project with the National IP Office, to which we practically lay out a variety of options through which the IP Office can support the private sector. And then together with the IP Office, we try to identify specific support services that would be the more effective and implementable ones within the unique needs of a specific country. So it's not a one size that fits all, but rather a tailored package. Many countries decide to deploy the IP diagnostic tool as part of this business support units. Other national IP offices focus on information materials, support for startups, the provision of licensing templates. There is a variety of options to choose from. And the last project that I will mention is what is clustered under support for business intermediaries. This is practically a project in which we identify what we call effective intermediaries on a country level. This can be Chamber of Commerce, accelerators, incubators, innovation centers, entrepreneurship centers in universities, each country again in its unique attributes. And then we practically work with the effective intermediary to develop a unique package in the context of IP through which we tap in with our tools and materials, customize and adjust them to the unique specificities of the country. I think that I will stop here, thanking you all again for the opportunity, and again, just re-emphasizing our strong commitment to work in the region wherever possible. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Guy, for this information, for these options. I see that we have already many questions in the chat. We are taking note of all of them, and we will come back to them at the end of the session. Many questions are very, very practical on IP protection. How can I protect my startup? How can I protect my SME? I really encourage you to stay tuned, because the answers may come in the coming presentations that we have. And this is why I would like to move to a very practical context, which is the context of an African SME that would like to share their experience with intellectual property. This is the SME called SICO, who is an African seed company with operations in over 23 African countries. It develops and markets crop genetic solutions to small and large-scale farmers in Africa. This company also plays a crucial role in food security across the African continent. And who best to speak about this practical case study than Dr. Gordon Mapuyaye, who is the global head of research and development in the company. He's passionate about offering crop genetic solutions to problems facing farmers across Africa. Dr. Mapuyaye has bred many active commercial maize hybrids and inbred lines with a strong emphasis on yield, earliness, heat, and drought stress tolerance. He has research management and corporate governance experience, sitting on many board committees for the past 10 years. So, Dr. Gordon, the floor is yours to speak about this case study that may inspire as well our participants.
Thank you, Esther. Good morning to everyone. It's a pleasure to be invited to speak here. As Esther okay, just tell me if you are seeing everything. Okay. Yeah, I was saying it's a pleasure to be presenting here. Thanks to Esther, Nancy, for all the work that we did in the background. So this will be a case study for the SIDCO group in terms of what we do in protecting our IP, what are our challenges, and what are our expectations. SIDCO, as you might know, started way back in 1940. It's 82 years old. The organization evolved from starting off as a SIDCO. Now it's a SIDCO group company. We've got tried and tested the brands, and in the interactions that we have with the farmers, we've got significant goodwill and reputation. We serve a lot of small-scale farmers in Africa, as well as large-scale farmers in Africa. The research component of SIDCO started in 1940, and since then we have never stopped investing in research to develop certified maize hybrid seed. We develop legumes, we develop oil seeds, we develop pulses as a way of enhancing our IP. We are present in 15 African countries. This is where you find our offices. But in terms of outreach, we are now in over 23 African countries, and we are still growing. We want to make the whole of Africa red. We believe for a farmer to succeed, it starts with the right seed. And as a result, we want our farmers to get bumper harvest. We want to share the profitability story with the farmers. We want food security. And these are the things that will make sure that as SIDCO grows, the farmers are also growing. We have developed over the years a lot of maize varieties that you can Google and find on the internet. We also have wheat varieties. These are spring wheat varieties that have done very well on the market, hitting over 10 tons per hectare. We have soybean varieties that are doing very well on the market, very resistant to a lot of fungal diseases and high yielding, 7 tons per hectare. We have groundnuts that we are trading in the markets. We also look into drought resilient crops like soybean, pure millet. We are into cowpea, plays a very significant role in nutritional sufficiency across Africa. We look at sugar beans, just to make sure that the farmer is complete in the nutritional sufficiency as well. So what we do in terms of IP, we invest a lot of time, effort, expertise, technology, money since 1940, the level of expertise that is in the organization is high enough to the extent that we make very good products that we put to the market for the farmers to enjoy, get a lot of testimonials. We also invest in trademarks. We participate in plant breeders' rights. At the end of it all, we're trying to protect our germplasm to make sure that we remain competitive, we remain different with our competitors. And naturally, when we roll out this germplasm, these are the commercial warriors that the farmers plant out there in the field. And this is what we put a lot of emphasis in terms of IP protection. We have got registered trademarks. We apply and get plant breeders' rights for any new varieties that we get. When it comes to dealing with the third parties, of course, we've got confidential non-disclosure agreements that we do when we want to exchange germplasm. And we would never really take anything that is not ours. So in terms of one of the strategies that we look a lot at is making sure that we really participate or are involved in all intellectual processes that are taking place in Africa, so that we support the IP that we are developing on a daily basis. Like I alluded to, that since 1940 we have been pouring money into research, and naturally that money needs to be protected. So we are in AfrIPI. Then nationally, in all the countries where we register our varieties, we make sure that we secure IP. A good example of the trademarks that we have and that we think works very well for us is animal iconography. This is a classification of our varieties, maize varieties, that is in terms of precocity, which is maturity. Find that the earliest we depict them with the animal hair. There's the monkey, there's the zebra, the lion, the elephant, and there is the giraffe. This makes it easy for farmers to identify these products as and when they are in the market. In terms of challenges, one of the issues that's affecting us is the counterfeit seed cells. Most of the problems that we face with the IP in Africa relate to counterfeit seed cells. People just taking grain, coloring it, copycating our packaging, hoodwing farmers into believing that this is a true seedborne product. So as you know, millions are put into the development of varieties and their maintenance in different geographies. But at the same time, the counterfeiters, they also make a lot of millions from where they did not sow. What this does to investment is you get serious losses, because instead of you developing a market share, the market share may be stagnant, not in its true sense, but because someone else is getting that market share. But more importantly, the final end product or yield that the farmers will be getting will be seriously affected, and it affects food security. The second thing that we see as a challenge is the porous borders of most African countries that we operate in. Historically, I mean, these borders were created sort of artificially. So a lot of communities still cross borders. But if now our seed or IP moves from one area where it's protected to another area where it's not protected, that presents challenges. And more so, if you look at the borders, these are invariably state-owned, and sometimes there is insufficient funding to make sure that all processes are in place. Legislation and the policy support by governments as well. Sometimes they take very long to be overhauled, or they take very long to be adjusted to the current needs and desires of us as the developers of IP. Even when processes are in place, what you find is the processes are too slow, to an extent that the counterfeiters are way ahead of judicial processes. By the time a case is probably concluded, if it goes to court, the effects will have been significantly eroded, maybe because of inflation and things like that. Another challenge is the level of penalties that are put on anybody that would have breached IP are very lenient. They don't discourage the would-be offenders from the. You find sometimes wholly suspended sentences. You find sometimes very paltry penalties that are not deterrent enough to make sure that whoever wants to be involved in the breach of IP is discouraged. As such, the counterfeiting activities are sort of very difficult to curb. And one of the things that we think is key or is also a challenge is I think the judicial officers do not have enough training on IP or have limited exposure to other cases elsewhere, resulting in sentences that are very lenient and that are not deterrent enough to would-be offenders. And we think this is an area that needs to be looked at. Also have AfrIPI as a system, but one of the issues, like an earlier speaker has said, is that it lacks a centralized IP enforcement system. It goes back to the country specific. And you find that even if a case is raised there, it really goes back to the country where it would have happened. And this is something that is expensive. We think there can be some improvements there. So our expectations is we think the public sector, the private sector, in terms of the business, needs to come together and make IP awareness so that we curb counterfeiting. There's obviously a need to overhaul the legislative and policies regarding IPs, the penalties that are involved, so that the IP crimes are taken seriously by everyone involved. In terms of improvement on enforcement, we think with better resources, the enforcement can be improved. The borders can be effectively managed. Judicial officers can be enlightened so that we preserve the IP rights. and minimize the infringements. Judicial officers, they can be trained the whole process so that when cases come there, they really know the importance of generating IP, all the costs that are involved, like in our case, when you look at the development of an inbred line in maize, for example, currently it takes between 6 to 8 years to develop one component, but for you to commercialize a product, it takes anything between 10 and 15 years. And of all those years, money will be spent in developing that IP. We also need to probably empower our judicial officers through IP resource materials so that they can improve service delivery. With this, I thank you.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Gordon, for this example. I would like now to move to our last speaker, who is Beata Suwala. And that links very nicely to what you just presented, Dr. Gordon, because Beata is going to discuss about the advantages that the Africa IP SME Help Desk, newly born, can give to SMEs in Africa and in Europe in terms of IP protection. Beata is working for the AfrIPI team in the European Union Intellectual Property Office in Alicante, and she's in charge of this Africa IP SME Help Desk. So, Beata, what can you tell us about the help desk that could help our audience and participants?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Esther, for the introduction. Good morning to all the participants, and thank you for staying until the last session of our event. I will present to you the project called Africa IP SME Help Desk, which is a relatively new initiative and which I have a pleasure to set its operations and coordinate its implementation. Okay, so the Africa IP SME Help Desk is an EU-funded project with the aim to raise the awareness of the EU business about the importance of the intellectual property protection and enforcement in Africa. The aim of the project stems from the fact that the EU and African countries share a common interest of facilitating trade and investment among themselves. African countries offer to the EU business a diverse market with a wide spectrum of economic, cultural, and geographical features, as well as the varying degrees of development of their IP systems. And exactly here is the objective of the help desk. The help desk aims to strengthen the awareness on how to best protect the IP assets of the European business in Africa. This includes the reporting on the landscapes in Africa, intellectual property landscapes, so how the things work, but also breaking the general misconceptions about African countries. Our services are provided free of charge to the European Union small and medium-sized enterprises interested in Africa and focus merely on IP awareness. We operate under the motto, know before you go, or which Nancy put before, KBYG. However, in the help desk, we do not give any legal advice. We do not provide any legal services to the users. This is merely information, first-line advice service aiming that our users go and seek professional advice with the specialized lawyers to apply the IP strategy for Africa, and most importantly, before any investments are done. All in all, the purpose of the help desk is neither to teach intellectual property, nor to provide any legal services to our users. To the contrary, our goal is to raise awareness, provide business-oriented information on intellectual property in Africa, on the basis of which companies can make informed decisions about business strategy there. The African project builds up on the success of the similar initiatives of the European Union, established and operating for years in China, in Latin America, in Southeast Asia, in India, and also we have one help desk even for European countries. The motto of all these help desks is very simple: allow the EU business to make informed decisions about protection of their intellectual property assets before expansion abroad, whether to China, to Latin America, Southeast Asia, India, or from now on to Africa. Putting it simply, know before you go. Okay. The operation of the Africa IP SME help desk has been scheduled for the 3 years, and we have launched our services only in October last year. The project is implemented through the AfrIPI, which is the cooperation program focused on intellectual property and innovation in African countries. And both the help desk and the AfrIPI are implemented by the European Union Intellectual Property Office, also known as EUIPO, based in Alicante, Spain. In fact, the help desk and the AfrIPI share the resources. So we had just before Nancy Samriwo, which is expert for AfrIPI, but also we like to use her for our help desk operations to pass the message to European business on how to best protect IP in Africa. We are located in EUIPO headquarters in Alicante, where I am based, and we also have offices in Africa, in Zimbabwe, and in Cameroon. In implementation of the help desk, we work closely with all the types of public and private institutions in Europe and also in Africa. Notably, we work with the European Commission agencies, with the member states delegations to Africa. We work with the European Union member states national IP offices, trade ministries, foreign trade investment agencies, just to name a few. We also work with the private stakeholders, such as the various business associations, chambers of commerce, industry associations, startups, all the types of multipliers through which we can reach all the SMEs before they invest in Africa. The help desk mission is to develop structured intelligence on intellectual property landscapes in African countries, which include, of course, the protection, the enforcement, all the trade-related aspects for each African country. And this intelligence we develop through our resources, our long-term experts working for AfrIPI, but also with a network of IP lawyers who are practicing in various African countries, who provide us all the intelligence about how the things work, how to best protect. So in the help desk, we don't try to change anything, we just report to business about how the things are working right now. And all this intelligence we disseminate to European Union small and medium-sized enterprises in the form of training courses, just like we had 2 sessions before, online resources, helpline service, and also news items as things change very fast in Africa. So just a few words about each of these. The training courses, for the time being, of course, these are mainly only webinars. And this will be very similar to the presentations of Gordon and Nancy. So these are rather short presentations about the key issues in the digestible way for the business. So we try to avoid any legal jargon. We will never speak about Article 55 says that. We will say rather, when you go to some African countries, you want to operate in this industry sector, please mind these elements before going to Africa. So we will have various types of webinars focusing on different countries, relevant to different industry sectors, relevant topics in different territories. So the next one, upcoming webinars, so we have scheduled one on the 9th of March, which will cover intellectual property in Nigeria, followed by one webinar about the agricultural sector on the 16th of March. During our webinars, we will also have the question and answer sessions, where all the business representatives can ask us questions, and our experts will be there to answer this. Our online resources, we have a website at africaiphelpdesk.eu, which is a knowledge hub where all the European Union SMEs, but also this information is freely available to anyone, can find all the useful, again, information about IP. So we have so far published, and we are in the process of developing of our country fact sheets. These go through all the basic information about the different types of intellectual property rights. This gives also a little bit of overview about the participation of the country in different regional or international conventions. So it's very similar to what WIPO has on its website, but in more business-oriented form. We also have, we will develop the case studies. We have a set of frequently asked questions. We have also IP directories, which can be easy accessible to European SMEs. So if they want to get some basic information about IP in Africa, I'm pretty sure they will find it on our website. If this information cannot be found, European business can ask us a question through our helpline service. So in this way, through email or by calling us, we will be able to provide first-line, confidential, and tailored advice about any IP-related matter concerning Africa to our users. The helpline operates in 5 languages. This is English, French, Spanish, Italian, and German. It is available free of charge to European Union small and medium-sized enterprises. And behind the scene, we have a big network of lawyers so that we can cover all the types of questions on IP, covering also all the countries in Africa. This service is up and running, and I invite everybody to use it. And also, we will schedule one-on-one sessions through which European companies can schedule a very short consultation with our experts. This will be no longer than 20 minutes, and these one-on-one sessions will be available after our events. But also, we are planning to have this possibility on our platform through our website. Okay, and for the target, we focus on the European Union small and medium-sized enterprises. This is a very long expression. Actually, we focus on what has been defined by the European Commission as the European Union small and medium-sized enterprise. So here we have the criteria that such company has to be headquartered in the EU and has some limitations as regards the number of employees or about the turnover. This qualifies for our free of charge services. However, as I said before, our website is available to anyone. Also, our events, if there are places, we will allow other users. And notably, except from the helpline service, which is strictly for the European Union SMEs, we disseminate our intelligence freely. But I would like to stress here, emphasize the fact that our services can be also very helpful, not only to business directly, but specifically to IP lawyers in EU who provide the legal advice to the companies. They can really learn a lot from our resources, and they can provide better advice. Lawyers can even forward to us their clients to double check, to confirm the strategy for Africa. As I said, we don't provide any legal advice, but we can maybe confirm, we can give some set of tips and tricks. Our services will be also useful to all the types of what we call multipliers. So these are the business associations, the chambers of commerces, the foreign trade investment agencies, with whom we can partner and organize events together. We can also schedule one-on-one sessions with their member companies or the companies that they represent. And also, last but not least, the policymakers. This means that we will get the intelligence from the lawyers. We put it in a structured way. We monitor the markets, we monitor the problems that the European business encounter when operating in Africa, and we will be putting it in a structured way in the document which will be called IP challenges, which we will pass on to European Commission, which later on can serve as a basis for the bilateral dialogues with African countries. Okay, and last is our contact details. So please visit our website at africaiphelpdesk.eu. You can call us, we have a dedicated phone line. You can email us, and also you can find us on our social media. So this is it. Thank you for your attention. And now back to you, Esther.
Thanks a lot, Beata. As Beata said, you can find us in the web, but you can also find us in the booth. We have the AfrIPI booth where you can find all information. You can also find some videos of the help desk that will help you understand better how it works. And you can contact us for a meeting if you want as well, taking advantage of this last day in the forum. We still have 10 minutes left, and I would like to take advantage of these 10 minutes to actually go back to your questions. And the first question is on GIs. We have one participant that says, I understand AfrIPI is rolling out GIs in Africa. Do you think that economics of GI in Africa will achieve the same goals like in Europe? Especially since most GI products in Africa are in small scale productions, and also agricultural system is more different than in France, for example. So who would like to take this question? Maybe Nancy?
Yes, all right, thank you for that question. I think, to be honest, yes, I think, there is a massive difference between the development of agriculture in Europe and in Africa. And in Africa, it's also complicated by the fact that, we also have political systems that are different. And the second complication is that not all national laws have approximated the protection for GIs uniformly. So you'll find some countries, for example, Zimbabwe, it has had GI legislation on its law books from 2001, but to date, not even a single application has been filed. And that, I think, some proprietors have preferred, notwithstanding the existence of that sui generis system, but actually register their GIs as trademarks or as collective marks, because our laws in some countries, for example, Zimbabwe, does provide for the registration of collective trademarks. So in other countries, there is no system at all, for the protection of GIs. But what we are trying to do in AfrIPI, I think GIs form a huge core of our business and of our aspirations into Africa. So we are having activities that are trying to dovetail into the Africa Union's GI continental strategy. And the first thing that we are doing is to try to establish a legal framework that works for Africa, that is dictated by Africans, and that takes into account the needs of Africans, including sustainable development. My colleague, Monique Bagal, is actually doing activities in West Africa right now for the promotion of GIs. So in summary, aspirations towards GI protection in Africa, yes, we've got them. Legal systems for the protection, they're sporadic at the moment, but the bigger picture is we'll get there. Competitiveness in terms of Europe, we are always, even as AfrIPI, looking for synergies in terms of which there is information sharing and influence of international best practices, so that at least as we march forward, the intention is that no one is left behind. So we are moving targets. I hope that answers your question, but if not, I'm sure Esther will give you contacts and we can take it bilaterally if you reach out to me via email. Thank you.
Yes, of course, if you feel that your question is not completely answered, don't hesitate to write to us and we will put you in contact with our different experts. Second question is on IP protection. So what are the steps to take to start the process? It seems very overwhelming for a small business to do so. And the question comes saying, is it even worth it? I can already say yes, it's worth it. But then I would like to give the floor to one of my colleagues to actually give a little bit more explanation. I don't know if maybe Beata wants to say something, or maybe Guy from the WIPO, who would like to take this question.
Beata, would you like to take the question?
Oh, well, I can try, but we have.
Okay, so you begin and then I'll compliment. Okay.
Yes, maybe not Nancy or Gordon.
Question is very basic actually. It's very overwhelming for an SME to have this feeling, and we know that feeling. We know the feeling of feeling overwhelmed. Many things to do, and then one more thing is IP. So why is it worth it, and how can they start the process, basically?
Okay, I can take a few words, and then maybe the colleagues will supplement. Well, I would say, first of all, going back to what you say, Esther, then I think it is worth it. And I think that, again, the most important thing for the SME, seemingly the first stage is registration or filing. But I would say that for the common SME, the first stage would be identifying. In other words, understanding which of the IP rights in the basket or in the bundle are relevant for the specific SME that we are dealing with. And this requires a simple process of audit or scanning that can be done with a consultant or an expert, or with some online tools, at least as a preliminary stage. And then moving from there to the stage of registration and filing. And here also, I would say that, using general terms as expensive or cheap would never really reflect reality, because it is always based on the specific needs of the specific SME, where exactly registration is required at the first stage. Is it just via the national route? Is the international dimension also ready in the beginning? And the only other element that I wish to emphasize is that I think, again, SMEs should understand that there are always a variety of IP-related dimensions that need to be taken into account and that are not necessarily such that require registration. So if we're speaking about trade secrets, for example, know-how, copyright, which in most jurisdictions does not require registration, then these are also elements that need to be taken into account and that need to be protected. So these are my 5 cents, just what to begin with. But I would say that the system is simpler than one may perceive. And I think that today, again, with the various options that Beata has just mentioned, and with the various options that organizations like AfrIPI and AfrIPI provide and WIPO provides, SMEs, and also with the internet, SMEs can have an efficient, easy to understand gateway, at least to understand the parameters, and then they need to take it from there step by step.
I would like to give the floor to Nancy as well to complete, but before that, we also received a question that links as well about, we have one participant saying that, what about helping Africans who want to protect their intellectual properties? Because it's true that we have spoken very much about European SMEs that want to maybe move their business to Africa. Guy, could you maybe complete on that one?
About Africans that want to protect their IP beyond the domestic market or within the region?
The question is open, so up to you to actually...
Well, I must say that, in this panel, there are other participants that are much bigger experts than me in the specific region. But then again, I would say that if we try to break the process into pieces that are easy to understand by a small business at the end of the day, then again, I would say that the first stage is identifying your intangible and IP assets via your business activity, then going through the ones that require registration on the domestic level. I think that in this context, the system in most African countries works very well, and AfrIPI and AfrIPI also based on this distinction that Nancy had mentioned in the beginning, provide an easy way to cover a significant portions of the region. And this is something which I think is unique to the African region, because if we put aside the EU, in most other regions, we don't have this option of covering many countries either via one registration or via designation. You need to go to the international system, which is a different system. And the other thing is that then again, I think that already in the beginning, the business need to consider and take into account whether it anticipates to go beyond domestic markets. And if there are prospects to go beyond domestic markets, then these need to be taken into account already in a preliminary stage. Because what we see in many cases is that SMEs acknowledge the value of IP at a stage in which it may be a little bit too late to protect your intangible assets once the product is already in market. So the general advice is plan ahead and protect your intangible assets as soon as possible in order not to reach a stage where you already face competitors using your intangible assets, in which registration may be a little bit too late or too little.
Maybe Nancy, in 30 seconds, could you maybe add something? Because we're really running out of time.
Okay, thank you. I think when you look at SMEs, the way I look at it is that there are two-dimensional issues to consider. Firstly, SMEs from Europe wanting to get into Africa. The costs of not protecting far outweigh the damage of not being protected when push comes to shove. Why would an SME want to be in Africa? Various reasons. Africa has got many countries and a huge market. And secondly, if you look at the graphics of its population, we've got the fastest, youngest population that is growing. Tech is growing. So there's a huge market there. And then you also have available human capital, that can actually drive your goods and services. So for an SME, I think to be in Africa is not something that you want to do because it's worth it. It's something that you want to protect because you deserve to be protected. In terms of the outflows of IP protection, I think they're a little bit different because if an African SME wants to go into Europe, there are systems that are available. So let's talk, for example, in terms of industrial property that can be registered. It's so much easier for African businesses to take advantage of the international systems that are already there. So say for trademarks, you've got the Madrid system, designs, the Hague system, patents, the PCT for filing. So the challenge has been not so much for outgoing IP from Africa, even though it is growing, but the challenge has been, and that's why the focus has been on European SMEs coming into Africa. So I think to borrow from, I think, a payoff line of one of the companies that I love. When you come into Africa, you have to think, what do I need right now? And that's part of your strategy. And then look forward also and say, 10 or 20 years looking ahead, what do I need? So that will often give you a very compelling reason to protect your IP. And borrowing from that company, it's first, do no harm. So first, make sure that you protect your IP even before you come into Africa. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Nancy. We have maybe a few questions that we will answer afterwards through our generic email. You can visit our booth. Thanks a lot for your attention. Have a lovely weekend, and hopefully fun will come with the weekend as well. But still, you have one day to visit our AfrIPI booth, so don't miss it. Contact us, speak to us. We still have one day to exchange. It was a real pleasure to spend this time with you. Warm goodbye from Esther Huerta from AfrIPI. Enjoy this last day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.